"So, Gary," I began, leaning against a workbench covered in what looked like rocket parts and old computer guts. "Hypothetically speaking, of course, say you had a fence." Gary's eyes lit up immediately. "A fence?" "A very, very boring fence," I clarified. "Beige, even." Gary shuddered dramatically. "The worst kind." "Exactly. And say, hypothetically, you wanted to film this fence, undergoing a sudden, controlled, comical structural failure for an art project." I emphasized the comical and controlled parts. Gary rubbed his hands together. "Structural failure, you mean like make it collapse, explode?" "My fence was magnificent. Seriously. Forget your standard-issue, dog-eared, boring brown picket nonsense. My fence was alive. I'd spent weeks on it the previous summer, transforming boring wood into a vibrant, sprawling mural. Swirls of turquoise bled into sunshine yellow, jagged stripes of magenta cut across electric blue. Little hidden creatures peeked out from abstract patterns of orange and green. It wasn't just a boundary, it was a statement. It said, "Hey world, someone lives here who isn't afraid of color. Someone who actively rejects the soul-crushing tyranny of taupe." It made my little backyard feel like a tropical oasis, minus the actual tropics and plus the occasional squirrel trying to bury a nut. I loved it, absolutely loved it. I was out there one Saturday morning, coffee in hand, just admiring the way the morning sun hit that perfect shade of lime green, when I saw him. Stanislav Stan Mirov, chairman of the HOA Architectural Review Committee, clipboard warrior, high priest of beige. He was marching down the sidewalk with the grim determination of someone about to issue a decree banning fun. My stomach plummeted. I knew, with the certainty of death and taxes, why he was here. He stopped precisely at my property line, adjusted his glasses, and consulted his clipboard as if it contained state secrets. "Mr. Henderson," he began, his voice as devoid of warmth as his preferred color palette. "Parcel 113B regarding the perimeter fence." "Morning, Stan," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Isn't it a beauty?" I gestured towards my vibrant masterpiece. Stan did not look at the fence. Stan looked at his clipboard. "It has come to the committee's attention," he intoned, "that said fence appears to be non-compliant with HOA bylaw 14.c, subsection 8, pertaining to exterior fence coloration." "Non-compliant?" I echoed, feigning surprise. "Stan, it's art. It's got character. My neighbor Carol loves it. Says it brightens up the whole street." "Neighbor Carol is not on the Architectural Review Committee, Mr. Henderson," Stan replied dryly. "And the bylaws do not make allowances for character or art in relation to fence color. They make allowances," he tapped his clipboard emphatically, "for the approved color palette, as detailed in Appendix F, acceptable shades of beige and off-white." I swear my soul shriveled a little just hearing those words. "Appendix F? Acceptable shades of beige? Stan, come on, look at it. It's beautiful. It adds value." "Aesthetic uniformity adds value, Mr. Henderson," Stan corrected me, his voice unwavering. "Adherence to the established community standards adds value. Your mural deviates significantly. Desert sand, gentle fawn, or eggshell whisper are the currently approved options for wooden perimeter fences." I choked on my coffee. "Eggshell whisper? Seriously? What even is that? It sounds like the noise a terrified ghost makes before apologizing for existing." Stan was unmoved. "You have 15 calendar days to bring the fence into compliance, Mr. Henderson. Failure to do so will result in the commencement of daily fines, as outlined in Appendix G, schedule of fines for aesthetic violations and other acts of visual rebellion." Okay, maybe I added that last part in my head. "Have a compliant day," he finished, turned sharply, and marched off, leaving me sputtering in a cloud of righteous indignation and beige fumes. Fight back. That was my first instinct. This was ridiculous, an attack on creativity, an affront to color itself. I stormed inside and immediately drafted an impassioned email to the entire HOA board, complete with photos of my glorious fence and testimonials from neighbor Carol, who was slightly bewildered but happy to help. I attended the next ARC meeting, held in the same soul-crushingly beige community room as always. It's not hurting anyone, I pleaded, gesturing wildly at my PowerPoint presentation, which featured close-ups of particularly cheerful yellow swirls. It makes people smile. It adds personality to an otherwise architecturally monotonous streetscape. Isn't there any room for individuality in this neighborhood? Stan adjusted his tie. Mr. Henderson, the purpose of the Architectural Review Committee, as clearly stated in the founding documents, is to maintain aesthetic uniformity and thereby protect the property values of all residents. By enforcing maximum blandness? I shot back. My colorful fence probably raises property values by preventing potential buyers from falling into a coma induced by excessive taupe. It's a selling point. Another board member, a woman who looked like she ironed her socks, piped up. The rules were clearly outlined in the documents you signed when you purchased your home, Mr. Henderson. Ah, the HOA trump card, the contractual obligation to beige. Stan delivered the final blow. Your appeal is denied. Please inform the committee of your chosen approved color desert sand, gentle fawn, or eggshell whisper within 48 hours so we can note your intended compliance. I walked out of there defeated, or so they thought. The threat of daily fines was real, and frankly, I didn't have the energy or the funds for a protracted legal battle over fence paint. Compliance seemed inevitable, but as I drove to the hardware store, staring numbly at the rows upon rows of paint cans, a new, dangerous thought began to percolate. If I had to comply, I was going to make damn sure everyone knew exactly what I was complying with. And maybe, just maybe, compliance didn't have to be the end of the story. I bought the paint. Not desert sand or gentle fawn. No, I went for the jugular. I bought 2 gallons of eggshell whisper. It was, if possible, even more insipid and soul-sucking in person than it sounded on paper. It was the color of disappointment, the color of waiting rooms, the color of Stan Mirov's heart. The weekend arrived, bringing with it perfect painting weather and a deep sense of existential dread. I laid out drop cloths, donned old clothes, and popped the lid on the eggshell whisper. The smell alone was depressing. And then I began. Painting over my vibrant mural felt like a physical assault. Each stroke of the beige-loaded brush was a betrayal. Goodbye, cheerful turquoise wave. Schlurp. Farewell, quirky magenta stripe. Schlurp. Adios, little hidden sunburst that only neighbor Carol had ever noticed. Schlurp, schlurp, schlurp. It was soul-destroying. I'm doing it, Chloe. I mumbled into my phone, headset on, needing moral support. My friend Chloe, thankfully, understood the depths of HOA-induced despair. I'm covering my beautiful, joyous fence in the color of sadness, the color of surrender. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry, Chloe sympathized. Stan is the absolute worst. But hey, she tried to sound cheerful. At least you won't get fined? Silver lining? Yeah, compliance, I said, my voice flat. The beige seeped into my very bones. Whoopee? But even as I said it, that little spark ignited again. Just documenting the whole process, you know? I added, trying to sound casual. For my records, posterity, and maybe other reasons. Other reasons? Chloe sounded suspicious. Mike, what are you planning now? Please tell me you're not going to paint something offensive under the beige. Nope, I said quickly, changing the subject. Just following the rules, Chloe. Being a good little homeowner. Gotta go, this beige isn't going to apply itself. But I was documenting it. Meticulously. I set up my phone on a tripod, recording time lapses of the vibrant colors vanishing beneath the relentless tide of eggshell whisper. I took close-up shots of the paint can label, clearly showing the HOA-approved color name. I filmed myself, looking suitably downtrodden but dutiful, applying the sludge with careful, even strokes. Stan wanted compliance? Stan was going to get high-definition, undeniable proof of compliance. He wanted his beige fence. He was going to get the beigest, most soul-crushingly compliant fence this side of a corporate office park. And then, by Sunday evening, it was done. The fence stood before me, pristine, perfect, and utterly horrifyingly beige. It radiated blandness. It sucked the color out of the surrounding grass. It probably lowered the local bee population's morale. It was exactly what the HOA wanted. And I hated it. I hated it with the fire of 1,000 suns, all painted eggshell whisper, presumably. Staring at it that night from my kitchen window, a new plan began to form, evolving from a vague notion into a concrete, slightly terrifying, and utterly irresistible scheme. Painting it beige wasn't the end. It was just Act 1. Act 2 required something more. Dramatic. This fence, this monument to enforced mediocrity, didn't deserve to just stand there, mocking me with its compliance. It needed to go out with a bang. Not a literal, dangerous, shrapnel-flying bang, obviously. I wasn't that crazy, yet. But a theatrical bang, a comical poof, a controlled, special effects-laden, spontaneous disassembly. Yes, that was it. I would film the perfectly compliant beige fence. I would give a little speech about following the rules. And then I would make the fence fall down, dramatically, on camera. That would be my statement. Now, how does one make a fence fall down dramatically without actually using explosives? Time to consult an expert. Or at least someone who owned a smoke machine and wasn't afraid to void warranties. Time to call Gary. Gary was a friend of a friend. A guy who worked a normal IT job by day, but spent his weekends building elaborate model rockets, tinkering with questionable electronics, and occasionally providing pyrotechnics, mostly flash powder and smoke pellets, for a local amateur theater group. His garage was a glorious mess of wires, soldering irons, half-finished projects, and things that probably should have been labeled flammable. So, Gary, I began, leaning against a workbench covered in what looked like rocket parts and old computer guts. Hypothetically speaking, of course, say you had a fence. Gary's eyes lit up immediately. A fence? A very, very boring fence, I clarified. Beige, even. Gary shuddered dramatically. The worst kind. Exactly. And say, hypothetically, you wanted to film this fence, undergoing a sudden, controlled, comical structural failure for an art project. I emphasized the comical and controlled parts. Gary rubbed his hands together. Structural failure? You mean like, make it collapse? Explode? Whoa! I held up my hands. No, not explode. No shrapnel, no danger, nobody gets hurt. Think, movie special effects. Like, panels pop off, posts wobble, maybe some smoke and loud bangs. Theatrical, safe-ish. Gary's mind was already racing. Ah, practical effects. My favorite. Okay, we could rig the panels with quick-release pins attached to fishing line. Yank the line, panels pop forward. For the posts, we pre-weaken the joints near the ground, maybe attach another line to make 'em wobble. And for the bang and smoke, theatrical flash pots. Small charge, big flash, loud pop, puff of smoke. Totally harmless if you're not sticking your face right in it. We could even add some spring-loaded confetti cannons filled with beige wood shavings. Okay, I said, trying to process the enthusiastic chaos. Let's definitely skip the confetti cannons, but the quick-release panels, wobbly posts, and flash pots, that sounds promising. And safe, Gary? You promise me this is safe-ish? Safe-ish, Gary confirmed cheerfully. Standard theater stuff. Just need some basic precautions. Safety goggles are a must. Keep flammable stuff away. Don't stand too close during the, disassembly. And maybe have a fire extinguisher handy, just in case? He winked. But it'll look awesome. The next week involved clandestine online orders from theatrical supply websites. Yes, I need 6 mini flash pots, loud report, thank you very much. Late-night trips to the hardware store for fishing line and hinges, and several evenings spent furtively prepping the unsuspecting beige fence under the cover of darkness. Weakening fence posts without making them actually fall over prematurely was trickier than I thought. Rigging the fishing line to the panels so they'd pop off convincingly required multiple attempts. Placing the small flash pots along the base, hidden by strategically placed mulch, felt deeply suspicious. I kept expecting Stan Mirov to rappel down from my roof with night vision goggles, citing me for unapproved pyrotechnic installations. Okay, attaching micro squibs to an HOA-compliant fence, I muttered to myself one night, carefully taping wires. This is definitely a new level of petty. Stan wanted compliance? He got compliance. Now he gets performance art. With smoke effects. Please, please, please don't let me set the neighbor's prize-winning poodle on fire. Finally, the day arrived. D-Day, Demolition Day, Disassembly Day. I picked a quiet Tuesday morning when most people, including Stan hopefully, would be at work. The weather was perfect, clear skies, minimal wind. I set up my phone on a tripod, aimed squarely at the fence. I placed my old GoPro near the base for a low-angle shot. Checked the batteries. Checked the remote trigger for the flash pots. Synced via a slightly dodgy wireless setup Gary had concocted. Took several deep breaths. Put on safety goggles, tucking them slightly under my baseball cap so they weren't too obvious on camera. Okay, showtime. I hit record on both cameras, walked into frame, stood in front of the fence, and put on my best, resigned but compliant homeowner face. Well, here it is, I began, addressing the camera lens, trying to keep my voice steady. The fence, as mandated by the Homeowners Association Architectural Review Committee, Bylaw 14.c, subsection 8. I gestured towards the beige expanse. Repainted last weekend in the officially approved shade of Eggshell Whisper. Took a while, cost a bit, I sighed dramatically. But rules are rules, right? Gotta maintain that aesthetic uniformity for the neighborhood. Gotta protect those property values. I paused, letting the crushing weight of conformity hang in the air. I looked sadly at the fence. It's beige, I said, letting the word drip with quiet despair. I stepped back slightly. It's really... I leaned in conspiratorially. Really? I reached into my pocket for the small remote trigger Gary had fashioned out of an old garage door opener. Beige. I pressed the button. Pop, bang, pop, pop, bang! The effect was instantaneous and surprisingly effective. 6 loud reports echoed through the quiet morning air. Puffs of thick white smoke erupted from the base of the fence. Simultaneously, 4 pre-loosened fence panels popped dramatically off their posts, yanked forward by the fishing lines I'd rigged, and clattered onto the lawn. One of the end posts, deliberately weakened at the base, wobbled violently back and forth like a drunken sailor before settling at a comical angle. It wasn't a Michael Bay explosion, it wasn't dangerous, but it was a definite, undeniable, hilarious destruction of Stan Mirov's beloved beige compliance. My jaw dropped, partially for the camera, partially genuine surprise that Gary's contraption actually worked. I stared at the smoking, partially collapsed fence. Smoke wisped around the fallen panels. The wobbly post creaked. Huh, I said, turning back to the camera, raising my eyebrows in mock surprise. Well, that's unexpected. I reached forward and clicked off the recording. The second the red lights were off, I burst out laughing, a giddy, slightly hysterical sound. It worked. It actually worked. Nothing caught fire, no panels flew into neighbor Carol's yard, and the fence looked perfectly, comically wrecked. Yes! Phase 2 was editing. I rushed inside, uploaded the footage, and got to work. This was my masterpiece. I carefully spliced together the clips. The time-lapse of the vibrant colors being swallowed by beige, the close-up of the eggshell whisper paint can, my sad monologue about compliance, and then the glorious main event, the pops, the smoke, the falling panels. I found the perfect soundtrack, starting with some mournful cello music during the painting montage, transitioning to Pachelbel's canon during the beige reveal, and then abruptly cutting to Motorhead's Ace of Spades the instant I hit the trigger. I added text overlays. HOA Bylaw 14. C requires fences be painted from approved color palette, Appendix F. Complying with eggshell whisper requirement. And finally, over the smoking wreckage, fence suffered sudden, unexpected structural failure post-compliance. The title practically wrote itself. HOA said my fence was too colorful, so I repainted it to match their rules. Then this happened. With trembling fingers, I uploaded it to YouTube. Then, feeling bold, I shared the link to the neighborhood's private Facebook group, adding the innocent caption, "Well, this was unexpected. Anyone else have issues with fence stability after painting? #HOA, #fence, fail, #eggshell whisper woes." Then, I poured myself a stiff drink and waited for the internet and Stan Mirov to explode. It didn't take long. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. First, a text from Chloe. "OMG, Mike, what did you do?" Then the Facebook notifications started rolling in. Likes, shares, comments. LOL, best HOA revenge ever. Is this real? Did he actually blow it up? Mike Henderson, you are a legend. This is incredibly irresponsible. Think of the children, the property values. That had to be Brenda. Wait, they made him paint it beige first? That HOA sounds awful. Someone check on Stan Mirov. I think his head might actually explode. Anyone know a good fence repair guy? Asking for a friend. The video ricocheted around local social media. By lunchtime, it felt like everyone in a 5-mile radius had seen my fence's dramatic demise. It was glorious. The HOA's reaction was, predictably, less amused. Around 3 p.m., a certified letter arrived, hand-delivered by a grim-faced courier. It was thick. Inside, legalese dripped off the page like venom. Cease and desist, unauthorized demolition, creation of a public nuisance, willful destruction of property, endangerment to community, failure to maintain property in an aesthetically pleasing manner. The irony of that last one was particularly delicious. It threatened daily fines starting immediately, retroactive to the moment the first panel hit the grass, plus legal fees, plus probably my firstborn child. My phone rang. Caller ID, Stan Mirov. I let it go to voicemail. The message he left was a sputtering, barely coherent torrent of rage. "Mr. Henderson, Stanislav Mirov, I have seen the video. This mockery. This blatant disregard for community standards, for structural integrity, for the sanctity of approved colors. This property destruction will not stand. Expect immediate and severe repercussions. Our lawyers will be in contact. You have violated multiple bylaws, bylaws you haven't even dreamed of. This is anarchy." Click. Anarchy? Stan needed to relax. It was just performance art, with minor property damage. Playing dumb was my only strategy. I drafted a polite, carefully worded email response to the HOA's lawyer. Subject, Fence incident at 412 Maple Drive. Dear, lawyer's name. Thank you for your letter regarding the unfortunate incident with my perimeter fence. As documented extensively in the video footage I have previously shared, link inserted here, the fence was repainted in full compliance with HOA bylaw 14.c, using the ARC-approved color Eggshell Whisper on date. Regrettably, shortly after the repainting was completed, the fence suffered a sudden and unexpected structural failure, resulting in the collapse of several panels. The exact cause is unknown, but I suspect the age of the fence, possibly combined with unforeseen stresses from the new paint application, may have contributed. I was shocked by the sudden collapse, which luckily occurred while I was filming the newly compliant fence. I am reviewing my homeowner's insurance policy regarding cleanup and replacement. Could you please clarify which specific HOA bylaw pertains to the prohibition of sudden, unexpected fence collapse following documented compliance with color regulations? Sincerely, Mike Henderson. Concerned homeowner. I hit send, feeling pretty pleased with myself. Let them try to find me for that. The next HOA meeting was apparently legendary, though I wasn't invited. According to Chloe, who got the gossip from neighbor Carol, Stan presented the video on the ancient projector, pausing dramatically on the explosion, demanding my immediate expulsion from the neighborhood, which isn't actually a thing. The board argued. Lawyers were consulted. The phrase malicious compliance was reportedly used. Ultimately, the HOA was in a bind. They could fine me for the debris, sure. They could fine me for not having a compliant fence now, but proving that the collapse itself violated a specific rule, especially when I had video proof of the fence being perfectly beige moments before? That was trickier. My sudden structural failure story, while thin, was hard to definitively disprove without admitting they were punishing me for mocking them. They fined me for failure to remove debris in a timely manner, and failure to maintain a fence in good repair. Annoying, but manageable. Stan Mirov, however, looked like he'd aged 10 years. He avoided eye contact with me for weeks, and the fence? I cleaned up the fallen panels. The wobbly post eventually fell over completely in a stiff breeze. I left it like that for a while, a monument to the absurdity. Then, I filed plans with the ARC for a new fence made of natural, unpainted cedar, which technically wasn't on the approved color palette. But crucially, natural wood tones weren't explicitly forbidden either. Stan approved it, his signature barely legible, without comment. Sometimes you don't win by fighting the rules. You win by following them, right up until the moment you blow them up. Figuratively speaking, of course, mostly.